Salufalava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susanna Suisuiki. Coming up.
And I told him that I'm smiling because I'm alive and I'm here now.
Solomon Island students return home from Israel. Also, the King and Queen of Tonga are in Fiji for a historic occasion, and
the context right now in the Pacific is of intense competition for influence, for access, for being the preferred partner, whether it's in the development space.
Vanuatu and Australia will revisit their agreement. The 5 students from Solomon Islands who were stranded in Israel have all returned home. They had all completed their 10-month agricultural course and were scheduled to leave Israel mid-June when the conflict broke out. Their evacuation was confirmed by the Solomons Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Last month, one of the students, Leroy Enoch Wate, spoke to Pacific Waves from Israel while waiting on news of their departure. I caught up with Leroy again and began by asking what it's like to be back home.
For me, personally, it's feel happy and just, very happy because I'm spending time with my family and loved ones and stuff like that.
And how are your other fellow classmates feeling since they've been back?
They very feel happy also because they want to come back home because, the war. And everybody was feeling happy. And
how many days did it take for all of you guys to get home?
we took a flight from Tel Aviv, which is Israel. That was on Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday. Wednesday, 11, maybe 10 minutes to 12, just before Thursday.
So from Israel, where did you guys fly to next?
From Israel, we took a 3-hour flight to Dubai. And from Dubai, we took another flight to Brisbane. And the flight is almost 14 hours, and from Brisbane, we took another flight there to Honiara, which is another 3 hours.
So while you guys were making your way over to Solomon Islands, were you guys still in regular contact with the embassy? Or was there someone that you guys could communicate with?
Oh, we communicate with our embassy. It lives in Dubai.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that you guys are back home and you're happy to be with your family and your loved ones. How did they react when you guys came through the arrivals?
They went to the airport, all of them, the friends, loved ones, and when they saw us, maybe some of them even cried. And they are very, very, really happy. Yeah. Everybody was very, very happy because even though they saw us, you still smiling? And I told them that I'm smiling because I'm alive and I'm here now. Yeah.
Have any of your family and friends asked you what it was like to be in Israel?
All of them. That's the first thing they asked me at the airport.
How did you spend your first moments back at home?
I just, in my mind, I just thank the Lord. That's the first thing. Like, oh my God, thank you so much. Now I arrived safely. Yeah.
So you guys managed to make it in time for the Solomon Islands Independence Day, right?
Yeah, and it's very good because right now we were celebrating.
How were you guys celebrating Independence Day?
Making some foods, just within the families and
Very nice. Would you ever go back to Israel?
No, not for me.
But for you, would you still like to travel overseas?
Yes, but not Israel. Maybe Israel, I don't know, maybe in 5 years' time, or I don't know. But not for now.
The King and Queen of Tonga are in Fiji this week for 2 highly significant ceremonies for Ratu Te Vita Uluila Kemba Mara. 3 chiefly titles are being given to Ratu Te Vita, the son of Fiji's first Prime Minister, the late Ratu Sir Kamisese Kapaiwai Tuimarilai Mara. Hundreds of people gathered on Niau Island in Lau, northeast of Fiji's main island, on Tuesday for a grand ceremony to witness the island's kingmakers present Ratu Te Vita with the first title, Turanga Tuina Iau. Margot Staunton began by asking distinguished Professor Stephen Ratuva how important the ceremony was.
It's quite significant because it's been empty for around 20 years or so because his elder brother was not able to be installed for a number of reasons. And so they had to wait until Tevita was in a position to be installed, particularly after he was in Tonga when he was running away from the Bainimarama government. And now politics has changed in Fiji, so he's back. And now they are going ahead with the traditional installation.
Let's just backtrack a little there. Why wasn't his brother able to accept the titles?
Oh, it was for health reasons.
Can we just go back, just explain for me, if you will, what actually happened? My understanding is that Ratu Tevita was wanted for treason and fled to Tonga and was shielded by the royal family. What do you recall happening there?
Bainimarama wanted to have him arrested. There was allegations of him being involved in some move to oust him, so he had no other choice but to run away to Tonga. There were allegations that he had said something against Bainimarama, and people heard it, and news spread pretty fast. Bainimarama became suspicious of him. There were other military officers as well who were being suspected of Bainimarama or being opposed to him. So Bainimarama, being Bainimarama, did not tolerate any opposition. Either you ended up in jail or you were sacked from your position or something might happen to you. So the only option available for Rokolui then was to find a way out of Fiji.
So he fled to the royal family, whom I believe are close cousins, aren't they?
The Mara family and the Tongan royalty are very, very closely connected historically, and up until now. It was a royal family with a royal family connection that sustained him for some time, until the elections in Fiji, which saw the demise of Bainimarama and his party that enabled Tevita to come back to Fiji. So there's a big political, if you like, dynamics taking place there, and how that is a backdrop to what is happening now. They've been close for a long time. In fact, the very first person to hold the position of Trilau, one of the four positions, which is going to be bestowed on him, was first held by a Tongan royalty by the name of Ma'afu, way back in the 1800s. And the second title holder was Ratu Sukuna, who was Rotumara's uncle, and then Rotumara, and then, of course, Rotumara's son now. So the connection between the Tongan royalty and the Lauan chiefly system had been around for a long time. It goes back to ancient history.
So tell me, what was Ratu Tevita doing in Tonga for those years? He was obviously over there until 3 years ago when Sitiveni Rambuka was elected.
He worked as an advisor to the king, and that was his official title all the time.
So he was effectively being paid by his relatives.
In some ways, one can say that. He was basically being sustained by the royalty in terms of financial support.
Do you know if Bainimarama ever tried to retrieve him from Tonga?
They would have probably tried their best, but they couldn't. And of course, the close connection between Tonga and Fiji was such that the politics turned out to be quite complex in those days. The relationship between Tonga and Fiji at some point was not good. But then, because of the strong cultural and family connections at different levels, that in some ways overshadowed politics. So part of that connection had to do with the bloodlines between Tongans and Fijians and, of course, the royalties.
And we will hear more from Professor Ratuva tomorrow on Fiji's political landscape. Vanuatu and Australia are set to re-ink an important strategic agreement in September. First signed in 2022, the Nakamal Agreement covers security, trade and development between the two countries. Vanuatu's Prime Minister Chotham Napat has told local media before he re-inks the deal, he wants visa-free access to Australia for his people. Meanwhile, Australia Foreign Minister Penny Wong has remained silent. Te Wila Fuatai has more.
The Nakamal deal is a security agreement between Australia and Vanuatu. It was signed at the end of 2022 by the leaders of both countries at the time. It's part of Australia's attempt to demonstrate its ongoing commitment as the region's primary security provider.
That's Pacific geopolitical expert Mihai Sora of Australia's Lowy Institute. The Nakamal deal was first signed by previous Vanuatu Prime Minister Ismail Kalsakau and Ms Wong for Australia. Now, current Vanuatu Prime Minister Chotham Napat says he wants visa-free access, otherwise the deal is off.
The context right now in the Pacific is of intense competition for influence, for access, for being the preferred partner, whether it's in the development space or the security space or the economic space. So this gives individual Pacific countries a great deal of leverage to essentially get better deals from traditional partners and get better deals from new partners as well, or new interested parties.
Which brings us to this condition that's been raised around visa-free access to Australia for Ni Vanuatu. Tell me about that.
Everyone knows that it's been an ongoing irritant for Pacific leaders, Pacific communities, Pacific business people, how difficult it is to navigate Australia's stringent visa regime. Now, that's the general context. That's been a reality for decades now. What we're seeing are increasing voices from, like this one from Vanuatu, but also from other Pacific leaders and certainly from civil society, calling for, at the very least, a rethink of Australia's visa regime.
Despite that, Mr. Sora says Australia is unlikely to concede to Mr. Napat's full demand. However, some change is possible. Currently, all Pacific nationals need a visa to get into Australia. The cost of that, and often prolonged processing times, are long-standing complaints about the system.
There's scope there to simplify the process. So it's interesting that, the ask may be seen as unrealistic and unreasonable, but the end result, after negotiations, it may be, I think it would be possible to see some improvement.
That's why, according to Mr. Sora, the ongoing negotiations over the Nakamau deal are worth keeping an eye on.
Indigenous leaders in the Northern Territory are fighting to keep their clan dialects from disappearing. A 2019 survey by the Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies found that only 12 out of 250 Indigenous languages around before colonisation are still being passed on. In recent years, dozens of communities have worked hard to stop further extinction. The ABC's Tilda Colling reports.
3 years ago, the United Nations issued a dire warning. Australia was one of dozens of countries facing a mass extinction event. But it wasn't flora or fauna that was at risk of being lost. It was languages.
Language is important for us. If we don't speak it, we will lose it.
Renfred Mayor Marulu is from the South Goulburn Islands off the northern coast of the Northern Territory. He speaks Hmong, one of hundreds of Indigenous languages around Australia. Hmong is more than words. For him, it's woven into the fabric of his culture in practices like songlines.
It's the window of who you are and where you're from.
In 2022, the UN knew the situation was dire. 40% of an estimated 6,700 mostly Indigenous languages around the world were in danger of disappearing. They declared it the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. IATSIS's language director Lauren Reid says Australia was no stranger to this language loss.
So over half of our Indigenous languages in Australia now are only spoken by elders. So that means that without urgent action during this decade and beyond, we stand the chance of those languages falling out of use altogether.
In the last 3 years, she's seen a shift.
There are signs of hope that have been growing since the beginning of the decade.
Ms Reid says the federal government has since recognised the crisis and set up a national policy partnership. But the strongest programs to save languages have been driven by communities working with elders and archives.
Over 30 communities are working hard to revitalise, reawaken and strengthen their languages to turn that tide of language loss.
In the top end, the effort's been led in part by Rurichwe Melanie Herman, a speaker of endangered language Dangu.
It gives me strength to work in the way that I want to and support language continuation in my community. But it goes back to who you are, it's your foundation. And without language, we're lost.
Recently, her family member, an elder and Dangu speaker, passed away. She said the next generation needs to learn the language before it's too late.
Our language is being lost, and the knowledge of speaking Dangu in particular needs to be maintained and it needs to be supported.
The Top End Languages Forum's report is expected to be finalised next month, including a series of recommendations by leaders from over 30 language groups.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā sui fua.